Hey everybody, welcome back to another video. Today we have a lot to talk about pretty much from every front, but I want to start with Bakhmut today because that's where the biggest stuff has happened. The Russians have withdrawn to the east of the rail line south by Andriivka. If I open up the satellite map, you can see that this railway runs pretty much all the way down through pretty much the entire south of the area. The Russians are still in the process of withdrawing from all these areas. This pink or purple line with the gray area inside is an area where the Russians haven't been cleared from yet, and there are some other areas like that, but they're being cleared at the moment. Ukraine has secured about the middle third of Klishchivka, only leaving the north to be the area that hasn't been cleared yet, and they've also gained progress in the south up to the rail line. Now, an area that wasn't affected by the Russian retreat was this area north of Kolomyichykha. A video came out of Ukrainians targeting Russian positions right in this area by these trees right here, and it revealed that the Ukrainians are on the northern outskirts of Kolomyichykha. I doubt that the Russians are going to be able to last in here for long, with the Ukrainians having the north and the west under control. And then from there, I think Ozaryanivka, which is right here, is probably going to be the next one. I think the Russians will probably soon conduct a full retreat to the rail line, except for maybe this area by the Mayorsk train station. They'd probably try to keep that. The main goal of Ukraine right now is to try to find a spot to breach that rail line. There's a little bit of an area north of Klishchivka which just has the rail line and not the trees. The tree lines are where the Russians are actually holding the defense, so breaks in the trees are going to be areas where they can move past. There's another spot by Andriivka, but this spot is probably being carefully monitored. I think the reason why the Russians still haven't completely left this area and Ukraine is still clearing it is because this is a pretty open spot where the Ukrainians can move in. This little lake right here that has a river going through it is a natural barrier for the Russians to use. But past the rail line, the next real good defense line is the TO513 highway, which goes down to Horlivka from Bakhmut. Overall, the progress here is starting to pick up a lot after the Ukrainians breached through Klishchivka. The former front line was about here or so this is a good amount of progress. I think a part about this that's being pretty overlooked is that any assault in the direction of Chasiv Yar is now completely out of the question. If the Russians even try, they're going to get hit from flanking crossfire from pretty much every direction along this area. Back when the situation on the flanks looked more like this, an assault in the direction of Chasiv Yar made sense because they had the Russians were in control of the flanks on the way there. But now that that's not the current reality, the Russians are going to just be flanked and having to go uphill. It's pretty much the absolute worst conditions you can have to advance in a direction. And with Russia's current offensive capability, it doesn't look like they're going to be able to take over Chasiv Yar. There's another area where the Russians' recent offensive has been going undone, and that you see, you like that segue? That was a nice segue. Up by the Zherebets River, Ukraine has liberated the settlement of Tokarivka. I don't know if you say the J hard or not. Good God. Who's on my line? This comes after the Ukrainians have liberated Nadia a couple days ago. It seems like the Russians are just losing general footing across this whole area. Serhivka is currently the last settlement that the Russians haven't taken, and there have been no counterattacks in the direction of Nadia or Novotyakhorivka because the Russians think that the Ukrainians are going to do a big assault to push them back to the Zherebets River up here. I was in the camp of people who didn't think this would become anything big or any kind of offensive. As soon as they said the goal was going to be Borova, I already knew that it was over because at the current rate of advance of the Russians, they're not going to go 25 kilometers in damn enough time. That's what's going on up there. We have some stuff down in the south to talk about as well. Novodonetsk has been a settlement that the Ukrainians haven't been able to take recently. I think there was a misreport that they'd captured it sometime back in June, but then the Russians did a counterattack, but I think the Russians just had control of it all the time. The reason why it's hard to attack is because it's at the top of the heights in the region, as well as a river to its north protecting a lot of advances into it. So even though it's small, it's sort of become a stronghold for the Russians in the area. But right now, it appears like Ukraine has cut the road between Kreminna and Novodonetsk. This means that it's going to be pretty much impossible for them to get supplies since there's no road to Novomayorsk. Let me make sure I'm not capping. I want to cap with you. And now that this road's cut, it's going to be a lot harder for Russia to supply and hold this settlement. If we do see Novodonetsk fall, that's going to widen the area where Ukraine can actually conduct operations a lot, which will make it easier to flank and take out Kreminna, and then they can begin attacking Novomayorsk as well. The main Russian defense line goes south of Stalmanivka and then down along this road. So taking out Novodonetsk is important because it allows them to open a new vector of attack in this area. as well as what they're currently trying to do, taking Staromlynivka. This will allow them to hit the defense line from pretty much every angle possible and make it a lot easier to attack. So that's why Novodonetsk is important and why this is a big development. It seems like Ukraine's main goal after taking Staromoyorsk is to reach Priutne and take over the heights south of it, which would allow them to get control of Zavetne-Bazhanya and then prepare for the final push to break through the line of Remivka, Volodine, and Staromlynivka and then access the main defense line. There was some Russian fantasy counterattack that happened at Staromoyorsk. I think this kind of stuff happens because like just some guy on Twitter starts capping and then that cap just grows with the bots that start to say the thing too. I don't know, I go on Twitter like twice a week, but that's the only spot I was even hearing about this, but then new footage came out proving that Ukraine had control over Staromoyorsk. One final area I want to talk about really quick is this area by Kamyansk. This happened a couple days ago, but I didn't talk about it. The Ukrainians liberated a bit of an area north of Luhove, which involved a part of the town of Kamyansk as well. This is important because I think in this axis, this is probably the best axis for a breakthrough to happen because it's closest to one of the main strongholds, which is Vasilyivka. If they can take Vasilyivka, they get access to Mikhailivka, and Mikhailivka is sort of like the Tokmak of this area. The Tokmak is the city that supplies pretty much everywhere around there. Mikhailivka is pretty much responsible for like this area, and out of all the highways that lead into Melitopol, these two ones up north are heavily fortified with trenches and stuff, but if they go down to Mikhailivka and then follow a route to Vesele and then into Melitopol, that road has effectively no fortifications because they're not expecting the Ukrainians to go that way. This is why Mikhailivka is fortified, but if they're able to get past that, then there's pretty much no fortifications in this whole area. There's a small triangle from Novokhovka to Melitopol to Chonhar or Armyansk, I always forget which one it is, but that'd be it. And if Russia's lines are already collapsing, that won't last either. Alright, see you guys later.